Hello everyone, welcome to the CLO 6.0 features Hong Kong webinar. And we have many updates and amazing features to showcase to you today. If you have any questions regarding the new features, feel free to leave your question in the chat. We'll start by showing some new changes to CLO UX and UI design. So we'll begin with an update to the interface design of Object Browser. The Object Browser is now showing by icons. So if you move your mouse near the icons and the names will appear. Next, we'll have an update to the DXF import window. And all settings are the same, but we consolidate the information into drop-down menu. Showing here on the left is the DXF import window of version 5.2, and the right is the one in version 6.0. So this is for importing a pattern. And for exporting a pattern, go to File Export, select DXF, then choose a saving location and name. And you will see the export option also have been consolidated. There is an addition option in the export window called Export Pattern Bounding Box. So this option supports users who would export the pattern and modify prints and texture in the Photoshop or Illustrator afterwards. If you select single bounding box, the entire set of patterns will be inside a giant box. If you select separate pattern bounding box, every single pattern pieces will have their own bounding box. Here are the results of exporting in either option. You can see a box around each pattern piece when select separate bounding box. And here is what it's gonna look like when you select the single bounding box. Now we will review a new mode in CLO 6.0, which is called UV Editor. Before switching to the UV mode from simulation, we will suggest users to set up their patterns in a layout that is almost a square. Since the UV mode layout is based on square, it will be easier for users to select patterns afterwards. So let's move into the UV mode. When you first look into the UV window, the pattern pieces are gonna scatter around randomly. And here you will also have UVs for your trims. First process is to fit all patterns into very first UV block. Right click into the 2D background and select Reset UV to 2D arrangement. All patterns will be shrunk down. Then it can be resized to all fit within the first UV. And UV for trims are available as well, and they will be in the corner when you select the reset option. I will pull them out and place them into any of the remaining UV map area. Once moving the trims UV to spare areas around the UV layout, you can right click in the 2D background and select Fit All UV to 0 to 1. A dialog will appear with options. So the default is set to length, and this is essentially a type of padding or buffer spacing around the edge of the UV. We can do this by length using millimeters, or you can use relativity to the UV coordinate. So switching to this UV coordinates option will give you a different scale of 0 to 1. That you can adjust up or down to change the amount of spacing away from the UV edges. And you can hit OK to confirm the sizes. On the top corner, you have a toggle menu to preview all of the maps and the mesh before you export them. And next I'm going to show UV snapshot. If you click on the icon, this dialog will appear. First, you want to click Saving tab to choose the file saving location and name. The size here is the pixel size at 2K by default, and if you wanted this to be 4K, you would double it to around like 4096. Turning on anti-alias will help smooth the lines that are exported. You can also change the color of the mesh that will result in your snapshot. So I'm going to leave the UV area setting to be 0 to 1 because previously I had asked all of my pieces to fit into this 0 to 1 UV. Now I've generated that snapshot. You can see here the wire color is blue and my layout matches everything that I create. And next I'm going to reveal the bake texture function. Click the icon below UV snapshot. A similar dialog to the UV window will open. Like the UV snapshot, first we are going to choose a saving location, and then you can adjust the pixel size and select which UV area that you are exporting. At the bottom part of this dialog, you can see all of the texture options that you might have. The area called Fill Texture Seams, it will make a little bit of the given texture on each piece. Kind of bleed out over the edge of the actual pattern shape. So when you bring it into another 3D program, those edges will spill out over a little bit. So you won't accidentally have any empty spaces or any gap at the edges. The units is in pixel because it's just adding very few amount of pixels around the edges. And that's why you can barely see any changes in the window when you adjust this. Then you can hit save to export any of the selected maps. I'm going to open up my exports to show you a diffuse map, a metalless map, a normal map, and also a roughness map. There's another way to use the UV snapshot. By utilizing more than one UV coordinates, I'm going to select my patterns and enlarge them. Then distribute one or few pattern pieces among every single UV. An important aspect is not to have pattern pieces crossing over the UV lines. They should always contain in a box. The reason that you might want to use multiple UV with maybe a single or a few pieces in it is that every single pieces by itself will then be 4K. So you will have a much better resolution for your texture maps. And when you apply them to other parts or other 3D software, okay. Click on Bake Texture, choose the file saving location, I'm making this 4K, and select only fill maps, and then select all tiles, and it will export any UV square that has pattern inside of it. And here are the export results. Here I'm going to go through grade reveal mode. This mode will allow you to reveal a full-size run with a graded pattern. Before I begin, I would like to point out that I'm starting with a graded pattern, and I also have a graded graphic applied. You can use this mode for a single garment or an outfit. I'm going to begin by clicking on the Graded tab in the object browser. As you can see, there's a size table for each garment. You are going to select the Pair Avatar tab. Initially, when you select Pair Avatar, it will be blank. Once you click Update, the window will populate a list that allows you to pair an avatar with each size. I would like to draw your attention to how it's paired up with each size table. It is going to match up 1 to 1. So the first size of the shirt will be paired with the first size of the skirt. You can see this here. It said small 4, medium 8, and so on. This is how the pair avatar will work. If you have multiple size tables, and if you want your sizes match up, They have to be in the same location on the list. The next important step is to pair the appropriate size avatar with each size. This file was built using a size 4 avatar, and even though you can see the avatar on your starting size, you still need to go through the process of pairing the avatar or 3D form for the initial size you begin with. So here you can click Pair Avatar and import your avatar through folder. I've saved each size as its own avatar file. I will select my size 4 avatar and pair with my size 4 outfit. In order to capture this image and see it in the grid fill mode, you must click on this icon called Save 3D State, Refill Mode Only. So I'm going to select the icon and quickly move into the grid refill mode. Since we have just clicked the Save 3D State, we can now see the avatar and garment. But we have not clicked Save 3D State for the other avatars, which is why they cannot be seen yet. To continue the process, the good workflow would be select your size first. You will see your garments enlarged. Then select Pair Avatar and pair the corresponding size. You then have the option to select Redrape or Simulate. What's great about Redrape features is that it will automatically resimulate that size into its finished state. I will select the 3D state and save that into grid refill mode. And I'm going to repeat this process for the last two sizes. So I'm going to switch to the size 12, pair my new avatar, then select Redrape. And then I will select 3D state. Now we have saved 3D state for size 4, 8 and 12. Let's move to the grid refill mode. And here you can see those are the sizes available so far. So I will finish my last size, select size 16, pair it with the appropriate avatar. And for this size, I'm actually going to simulate my garment. First, I will layer my skirt and then simulate. When the simulation is done, I can remove the layer. Then turn simulation off. Once I click on Save 3D State, this image will populate into grid refill mode. And now I can see my full size run and refill it in different ways. First, I can move my avatar around all together or individually. If I want to move only one size, I will click the lock button to unlink the rotation. This allowing me to move each window on its own. To go back to moving them together, simply click the lock button again. You can also adjust the size of these images by changing the pixel number. You can change the layout to horizontal or vertical. You can reset to the original layout by clicking the upper left reset button. And you can do this in full screen too. If you wish to exit the full screen, just hit escape on your keyboard. All the images can be saved by selecting the save icon, and CLO will prompt you to choose the saving location. You will have the options to save as transparent background and save separate images. If you do not select save separate images, all of the images will be combined to be a long image. And this concludes the demo of grid refill mode. So next I'm going to go through the nesting process and features. Nesting is a function that has been added during one of the 5.2 patch releases. I'm going to go through the process and how this function has been updated. So right here, I'm using a graded pattern that have several sizes. You can do this process whether your pattern is graded or not, but one of the features allowing you to lay out various sizes. So I'm going to show it with that setup. So move into print layout mode. And the pattern pieces might be scattered around initially. If you right click at the background and choose reset to default arrangement, and the pieces will arrange a little nearer. I'm just going to change the width of my fabric row. Then you can right click at the background again in the print layout mode and choose nest all patterns. First row you see will be number of garments. This is the amount of duplicate that you would like to lay out. The next is buffer spacing. This is going to add a little bit of space in between your pattern piece so they are not touching directly. And I'm going to put a check on nest or grading sizes. So what that's going to do is lay out 2 garments for every sizes that I have. Then you can click proceed and the process will begin. This can take some time. Basically, the more garments and sizes that you ask for, the longer the process will take. So when the process is done, the dialog will return to the original state, and hit close and zooming in to check whether the buffer space has been built in. You can see all the pattern pieces laid out on one giant area. The original pieces show with the texture image, and all the duplicates will show as outline. So this is an actual size image. If you would like to save it and print it out, you can click on the save image button, and it is going to open you up to 2D snapshot. And there you can make the preset as 1:1. Then you can save it as a PNG file. I'm gonna open up the PNG file and zoom in to show you that this is the actual size. You can send it to a printer or a plotter to print it out. One thing to be cautious about is that the nesting is only going to live in this file while it is opened. So please save your image directly after you've done the nesting, because the nesting will be removed even though you have saved the file and reopen it. Or you can say like the nesting is going to be gone once you close your file. And next I will go over the updates to the colorway mode. The first thing is that material is now grouping by titles in this mode. On the left you can see there's fabric, graphic, top stitches, and there will be the buttons and trims if you have applied any to the garment. The group between each section is defined by a line. Then I'm going to enlarge the fill of each column. A scroll bar will appear in the bottom. Since these sections on the left hand side are fixed, moving the scroll left and right, you can still see what categories you are working with. The next set of features is in regards of the selection. So now if you right click on one of these chips, you will find select all with same color. If you click on this, everything that has the same color will be selected. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and you can see that the top stitch share the same color even though they are in different sections. That area will also be selected. If the same color is within any parts from other colorways, that will be selected as well. And the second part for selection is a technique to hold shift and move from left to right to select entire area quickly. This selection reads from left to right. And to demonstrate, I will select a top chip and hold shift to move to the bottom. It will select downward on only one colorway. But if you start moving over from left to the lower right corner, it is going to select everything within the area and crossing over to other colorways. And if you hold the control key down and click back on some of these chips, it will deselect only those chips. Therefore, you can do a mix of selection by holding Shift and then switching to the Control key to add areas. The last part of the colorway update is built into the Save Image option, and now you can select saving the image of a 3D window or a colorway editor. And the colorway editor option is the new part to save the colorway table as a PNG image. Then I've just opened this file to show you the result, and you can use the PNG wherever you like. Then I'm going to go over an update for Evernote Form users. Here I have an Evernote Form with a garment, and what is currently in this phase is this AVAC file, that's the Evernote file. Now you can get an AVACP file that is basically a post file for your Evernote form. So you can double click on that or drag and drop it into the workspace, and you will be able to change poses of your Evernote form. The AVAC file will be created and provided to you by Evernote, but now they can be used directly in CLO. Here I'm going to walk you through the update to Avatar Measure tools, and this is a set of tools in the 3D window that are located here. I'm working on a full screen 3D window, so you can see all of them, and there used to be a set of tools hiding called Avatar Tape, and the functionality of the tool has been getting into this set of tools. I will quickly show you a comparison of the 3D toolbar in 5.2 and 6.0, and just point out that the old set of tools I used to call the Edit Avatar Tape and Attach Avatar Tape, and that functionality has just been grouped into the set of tools that now called Avatar Measure. First, I will fix my pants to have tape measure mark that I put around the waist. I will hide the top and she's wearing. Then I'm dragging wider the 3D window and select the surface circumference measure to give the avatar a marker around the waist area. Then attach the pant waist to the marking. So let's move to the center front view. To get the surface circumference tape down to the waist, you will need 3 clicks to complete. Your first click will be initial starting point. While you are moving, you can hold Shift to see guidelines on avatar body. The second click is then starting to create the circumference. And then you can release Shift. Now you can see the circumference moving while I start rotating the avatar. I will move to the center back and use the third left click to put the tape down. Then I'm going to switch to Attach to Measure. You will have to click on every edge of the pattern and attach it to the tape. So left click on the waistband and click on the tape until I have attached every edge. So now if I hit spacebar for simulation, the waistband moves and attached to the marking. And then I can turn simulation off. The waistband is fixed to my marking. To demonstrate the difference between basic circumference and surface circumference, I will put some markings down to the bust area. I'm using the basic circumference measure to put markings around the bust, and you will see that how this is measuring straight across and not following the surface of the avatar. Now let me switch to the surface circumference measure to do some adding to the same area. You will see that these markings follow all the curvatures of the avatar. So as I rotate the view, you can notice it's following to the bust. To delete markings on your avatar, simply pick the Edit Measure tool. You can hit left click and click Delete on your keyboard. Or you can right click on the marking and choose Delete Measure. Next, we will go through the basic tape measure and surface tape measure. Using the basic tape, it will create straight tape and not following to the curvature. If I switch to the surface tape measure tool, this will follow the curvature of the body. Also, I'm going to use the surface tape measure to draw an underbust marking. Just to demonstrate an effect, as you are moving and following this shape, you can left click to place some anchor points as you are moving. If you made a mistake, you can hit the backspace on your keyboard and it will move back one step every click. And to end the line, you can double click. Going further, I will introduce the linear measure. This tool basically measures straight through the avatar. Let's say I would like to measure a neck width. I can go to neck and left click where I want it to start. Move straight across and double click to the end. This doesn't follow the surface, it just measures straight through a space. Just to demonstrate one more time, if to measure the hip depth from front to back, you can see how it's touched the surface when we click, but measure straight through the avatar's depth. Now I will switch to the height measure tool. So to use this tool, I will first bring my garment back. And this tool measures from the floor to any surface on the avatar, following where my cursor is. Let's measure the inseam height from the floor. The last thing in this part about tape and measure is how to detach things from the avatar tape. Use the Edit Measure tool. If you right-click on the attached area, you can select Detach from Avatar Measure or Detach All from Avatar Measure. To detach the entire pants from that area, I will click Detach All, because if I click Detach from Avatar Measure, it is going to detach the connection on only one edge. So click Detach All from Avatar Measure, turn on simulation and the pants can be pulled down, or will sink down by gravity. And next I will go through the addition of arrangement points to the 3D shape that comes with our CLO library. So the polygon here is designed for creating bags. I will talk about the setup a little bit. All of them have arrangement points for general areas around the shape, like the front side, back, bottom, but they also have arrangement points for straps. To understand what direction that your pieces are going to go in, is by looking what the bounding volume shape look like. Turn on the bounding volumes, they look green, and arrangement points are attached to these. When you attach fabric to them, they wrap around these cylindrical shapes. So understanding this concept will help you to control what is happening, and especially when you are dealing with a lot of back pattern pieces that are similar in shape. Here I have opened a file that already have patterns, then turn on the arrangement points and quickly arrange the pieces around the 3D shape. So I have the main body arranged and I will arrange the straps. Here I have a long strap to go across and connect to the side, and two small straps to go from the front to the back. The way the pieces react on arrangement point is actually related to their orientation in the 2D window. If we turn on the bounding volume, we can see the strap is not following the bounding volume and the direction I want. So try rotating the piece in the 2D and then reset the 2D arrangement. It will follow the opposite direction of bounding volume. Now the strap can follow the arrangement points and its bounding volume. I will get the same result for this tiny strap. You can see the preview of what the shape will end up like on the points. To put small straps in the opposite direction, rotate them in the 2D window, then reset their 2D arrangement. Now in this position, when I select them to the points, they are following the direction that I need. The bounding volume is not necessary to be on for arrangement. I just have it on to show you that what that shape is relating to. The last thing for this part is the addition of a cube shape to the bounding volume option. Here I turn the bounding volume on, move a cube shape out, you can make these shapes by going to the Avatar editor, clicking on Arrangement. There's a plus sign to add a bounding volume. The bounding volume starts as a cylinder by default, and you can change the shape and adjust the remaining measurements as you need it. And that concludes the update for the 3D shape arrangement point and the option of a cube shape bounding volume. So here I will go through a new function for converting avatar. Click avatar, there will be a new function named auto convert to avatar. First, you will need to import a 3D body file. Select the 3D avatar, usually they are in OBJ or FBX format that you get from other 3D software and edit in. Your avatar will show in the scenes, and then you can select the gender that match your avatar. In my case, we have a male avatar, so select male as the gender. So next we have to select what we would like to output from the converter. So next we have to select what we would like to output from the converter. The first option is close skin style. We are going to change the skin of our file to a specific close avatar skin texture, but still like maintaining the body shape. The second one is the ragging only. So we are going to keep the skin of our file, but we will be able to rig our custom avatar, like putting skeleton inside of it. The third one is the size editable. We'll keep the same skin, we have the avatar rig, and the custom avatar will change shape to match the clone avatar as well, while maintaining the ability to be further added after the conversion. User can select just one or more options. If you select all three options, then you'll get 3 converted avatars in one time. And the last thing to do is to select the file saving location and name. When you click Convert, it will start process. And here we have 3 avatars. And you can see that the one on the left, we have the skin changed to one of the close avatar skin. The middle one, we have the skin of the original file, and now the avatar has been ragged in. The one on the right, we have the original skin, the rag is inside, but the body shape is changed to very similar to close size editable avatar. If we go to the avatar again, select Avatar Editor, we will have the option to select what avatar we want to change to the measurement. But only the size editable avatar will be able to change here. If I go to and delete the first 2 avatars, we can go to Clone Library and choose one of the avatar size file, which is in the .avs format. The avatar will change its size when we click the .avs.
Next, I'm going to go through the updates for the integration with AXF files and with Substance files. So both of the integrations are a little bit different. So first, I'm going to begin with the AXF file type, and that integration is really similar to our integration with XText file that we have currently. You can take an AXF file and drag it to your fabrics. and it will import the texture and any maps that are built into the AXF file. Another way to import these files is by right-clicking and choosing Import. In this case, you have to choose the appropriate AXF file. So now you can use these files directly. The next option I'm going to go over is the Substance integration. With the Substance integration, we actually now have a Substance folder in the CLO library with some default Substance files. If you don't have this, you might just have to download this new assets. And you can also simply drag them to your Fabrics here. The property editor with Substance files is going to be more complex. They will come with a preset, which is something that will be determined through the Substance files itself. So I'm going to add this specific Substance files, because I want to show you that in the property editor, you are now having the properties that are actually adopted from Substance. So this Substance files doesn't have any preset, but I want to show you that there is an area called Advanced Parameters. And all of these properties are from the Substance file. So depending on what was built in that particular file is what will result in the option that you have here. Here I just demonstrate changing some of the properties. If there are color channels in your Substance file, you will also be able to access them here. So the next detail about Substance file that I want to point out is how they interact with Colorway mode. So here in Colorway mode, I made a second colorway, and you can really just drag the Substance file to your Fabrics. You can also just change properties within an existing Substance files, or you can trim through its preset. So I will just add an additional colorway and bring in a Substance file that have presets built into it and drum through those presets. You can also choose to make Substance files and regular texture files. And then the last detail is that there are two links to bring you to the Substance source page, or to simply learn more about Substance. Substance source has hundreds of fabrics that you can download and use directly in CLO. Now I'm going to show the Add Print function. In the object browser, there is a new Add button next to the fabrics. If you left-click on it, a window will pop up for you to import a texture file. This is a PNG file that has transparency, and it is a seamless texture repeat, and it will add it as a print layer. You can only add one print layer for each fabrics. And you can see in the property editor that it has its own section. You can switch it up through here, or there is a delete button. So here I'm just going to select another image instead. Now I place a separate untiled graphic to show you the different styling options that are built into this feature. So here you have the options to change to brick with the horizontal offset, or half drop with the vertical offset. You can also apply the material type to this layer separately. Here I have added a metal type, and then I'm also going to place a normal map. So you have all the same map areas that come with the property of the texture image. And the last important detail about this is how to resize it. So to resize this layer, you must do it through the texture transformation section. Here I can adjust the size of my image without affecting the base texture layer. Next, I'm going to go through the Multitexture Editor. So you recently saw this option called Add Print, and I just want to point out that Multitexture Editor is very separate from this function. It is a function for you to decide the print directly in code with a few additional options. So the way to access Multitexture Editor is by clicking on your fabrics, and in the Property Editor, next to Texture, there is a little print brush icon. If you left click on this, a window will open up. And you are able to zoom in and zoom out and play around your window here, same as the 3D and 2D windows. So these yellow lines are the canvas that you have to work within. And one of the controls that you have is through the preview setting here. So you can just turn the gray off or adjust the opacity of the preview around it. And as you can see, whatever you create here will repeat infinitely on your texture. So the first thing to be really aware of is the actual canvas size is shown on the top. I can change my unit to inches. This size is directly adopted from the initial texture image that was there when I opened up the editor. If I select this layer, you can see the size of the image matching with my canvas size. Here I just want to demonstrate that changing the canvas size from up here is not going to adjust your texture image that are all within it. So for example, if I type in 13 by 13, you can see that now I have a spacing surrounding my image because my texture image here is only 10 by 10. If I click on this layer and also make it 13 by 13, it will adjust to match the entire canvas size. I can also make it larger than the canvas, and that will get cut off but repeated. Here is the dotted lines showing me that the actual size of the texture image. So with the base texture images, you often want to make sure they are going to match the canvas size that you are working with. But you don't need to think about it too much because if you have a texture image applied, the canvas size will automatically update that initial size. So then a good reason for me to point out that each layer comes with a locking function. If I click the lock button here, all the options will be grayed down and nothing can be changed. I have some images here that I'm going to use. An easy way to apply them is drag and drop them into this layer panel. So here this layer that I added will be placed on top. And I can actually tell that it is not matching my canvas size. This layer is a clean repeated graphics. So I'm going to link by proportion and adjust the size here to match my canvas size. And you can also click Add button to import an image manually. So for individual layer, you can move them around and you can use this tool to rotate them and resize them. I'm going to place this graphic here, and you can also make a copy of your existing layers. I'm going to edit this copy and drag it here over to the corner. You can see that the graphics is cut off by my canvas, and I can see that shown in my repeat. The solution is to extend to other size. So when you turn this on, you can see it will allow that area to repeat over and show in your canvas. I'm going to add one more layer and freehand resize this until the seams match up. You can reorder layer in this layer panel. And you can also desaturate and recolor an individual layer as well. You can also turn on this tile option to have your image repeat. And adjusting the opacity is also an option. One of the special parts about the Multitexture Editor is the blending option. I'm going to zoom in on this flower, and you can't really see the texture through the graphics. On the stripe, you can because we have adjusted the opacity, but for the other layers, you still cannot. There are a lot of blending options. I'm just going to show a couple of them. Now I'm choose multiply, and you can see how this blends into the layers. This will blend with every single layer that is below it. You cannot choose to blend it with only individual layer. And now I'm using these graphics to jump through some of the other options. The transformation section is all connected to this scaling and rotating tool. So here, if I move this around, you can see the position changing. So this allows you to change by enter certain values. This all comes with a reset button. Here you can see it reverse this layer. So when you have done working with this editor mode, you do have to click the apply button in order to completely save your changes. The nice thing is, if you forget to do that, CLO is going to tell you that the changes have not been applied and ask if you want to apply to the texture. Clicking yes here means clicking the apply button. So I will click yes. Another thing to be aware of is that it is going to generate one flow devised map image. This is actually a PNG image of my compile layers. So if you do create a print, you will have access to the compile image as a texture image. You can always click on the editor to access your layer and keep editing. So that's one last important detail that you should know when you're using this texture editor with fabrics that already has several different maps. Now I go down to the transformation section. My texture image is that 13 by 13 size that I chose, but the normal map and displacement map are not. They are the original size that I have with the texture image. So I need to update this to match in this case, but you can prevent this from happening. Just do not change the canvas size or the initial base texture size. Then the next question is, how is this new feature interact with Colorway mode? It is definitely compatible with Colorway mode. So here I move to Colorway mode. And I'm going to add an additional colorway. And then you can select your fabrics and access the Multitexture Editor to update the print for this version. Everything can be different from this version, from the canvas size to the texture. This is still the colorway mode. It is not going to change the physics of the fabrics only. So here I'm going through the process of designing a new print. At the end, you simply have to hit apply button. Once that applied, you can close the texture editor. You can hit update to see your changes. And here under the texture, you will be able to access the devised map with specific colorway. Let's look at what feature has been added to the Edit Texture tool. To start the demo, I'm going to add a texture image to my fabrics. Then switch to the Edit Texture tool. Now, when you use the scaling option, this is changing both sides. So here you can select the fabrics in the object browser and go to the backside of the fabrics. Uncheck Use the same material as front. And here, in the 2D windows, I'm going to switch to the backside of my texture. Now, the Scale tool will resize the back texture or the front texture independently. You can see only the back side is adjusting now. And we have the tool in 3D window as well. So I can select the front or the back, and it will change those textures separately. I'm going to go over the update of the graphic features. I'm going to begin by adding a graphics to the front of my shirt and placing it down as the original size. Now, the graphics turns out small, so I'm going to resize this graphics image. There has been an addition to the right-click feature of the graphics tool. If you right-click a graphics, you will find Reverse to Original Size, and your image will return to original source file size. In case you resize your graphics and also tile this, I'm going to choose Tile, Pattern, and now right-click to choose Reverse to Original Size. It is not going to remove the tiling. In this case, you can right-click and choose Tile, Remove Tile here. Or, we also added tile into the graphics properties. So here I have my graphics select, and in the property editor, go to the graphic configuration. Here we have the tile. You can choose in the drop-down menu and change the direction, or choose none to remove your tiling as well. So next, I'm going to show graphics over seam line. To demonstrate, I will place my graphics down in 2 locations. And I'm going to begin by moving the graphics over the seam line. In order for this feature to work, the seams must be shown together. And once you move the graphics, you won't see anything happened yet. You need to choose the graphics and go to Property Editor. You will find the over seam line. Check this function on, and then the graphics will appear on the other pattern pieces. Sometimes you may find it doesn't work even if you turn this function on. I'm going to explain why this happens. There is a property of the over seam line function called the tolerance, and here the default number is 0.02. It means any sewing relationships that has a difference bigger than 0.02 will not show the over seam line function. So how to check the difference of my seam line is by switching to the Edit Showing tool and selecting the seam line. I will switch to monochrome surface so you can see it really clearly. When I select this front seams, it shows me that there is a difference of 0.07. So 0.07 is larger than the 0.02 default tolerance. I can either adjust the patterns so that the seam lines match, or I can increase the tolerance of the over seam line function to allow the graphics to show on the other pattern pieces. So now I'm going to change my tolerance to 0.08, and then we can see that graphics appears. This feature is built to prevent users from putting graphics over areas that have too large difference. So they have to adjust or override that setting to go above the tolerance. Next, we are going to go through a property called Z offset, which has been added to the top stitch property and the graphics property. So before that, I'm going to demonstrate why you might need this property. Here, this graphics has a displacement map applied. If I open up this displacement map setting, I have a displacement height of 4 mm with the shift of -1, which means I have 3 mm of this displacement height showing on my graphics. Now, I open the render preview window, so you can see the visual thickness of the graphics. I'm going to apply top stitch on the internal lines that are following the shape of these graphics. Here in the 3D preview window, it looks like the top stitch is on top of the graphics. But if we switch to render mode and update our window, you can see that the top stitch is actually below the graphics and we cannot see it. So let's go back to the 2D window and select all of the top stitches. There is now an area for Z offset. I know my graphics has 3 mm of height, so I will type in the same amount here, and then switch to the render window to see what it will look like. So now you can see the top stitch is moved to the surface because it has been offset from the pattern. Then I'm going to demonstrate how Z offset works on our graphics. So here I have a graphics placed on the back of the garment. Just to point out that this graphic has no displacement map, so it has no extra thickness and it's going to be very flat. I'm going to use the same top stitch over the internal lines that are nearby the graphics. Now switch to the render window, and we can see the top stitch is on top of the graphics. So if I would like to have the graphics be over the top stitch, I can now select the graphics and go to the property editor to change the Z offset to 1 mm. And you can quickly see this raise up the graphics. What that actually does is physically raising the graphics out of the surface of the fabrics. If I demonstrate this by having 10 mm, you can see very clearly that it is raising very high. So, using this setting in a very small measurement like 1 mm or possibly 0.5 will allow you to layer things, will give you better control of layering your images. I switch to the render preview, and we can see that the graphics is above the top stitch now. So those are the two places where the offsets have been added. Next, I'm going to go through a feature called auto sewing, which is a really amazing feature. First, you have to understand is the position on the binding volume. When you click Auto Sew, it is really going to recognize things that are connected to the same binding volumes most effectively. And then the second attribute is the proximity of seams very close to each other. So here we can see the side seams are near each other. Then some other areas have relationship to find also based on the binding volume and the proximity to other binding volume. I'm going to start from a newly imported DXF file. And the first thing I'm going to do is set symmetry among all of the patterns. So the auto sewing function is located here in the 3D window. And if you left click on this before any pieces are arranged, it is going to identify dots and pleat closure and first sew those areas together. Here I have some dots and I will demo pleats in our second file after that. You can see that the sewing has been applied to the dots here. So in order to sew the rest of this garment together, it requires arranging them around the avatar. I turn on my arrangement point and start placing these pattern pieces at the appropriate locations. So now that's all the pieces placed. Then I'm going to hit the auto sewing button. So it just identifies what areas will go together based on the proximity to each other and their placement on arrangement point or binding volume. And it's actually auto-sewn everything together. And I just set this top to layer 1 and bring the pants down slightly. and then simulation. So auto sewing will work best on simple shapes. The more complex the pattern becomes, or any types of construction is needed, it is going to struggle to sew really complicated things together. Next, I'm going to go through second example. I have the DXF import to the workspace, and I'm going to start the arranging process. You can see that these patterns have a lot of seams, and it will help to select them as a group and place them on an arrangement point together as a group. I now freeze these simulated pans before I simulate my top, and then hit the auto sewing. Now you can see all the seams comes together, that it works well with the seams like this. It is obvious that these sections fit together. So here I'm just going to go through some different outcomes based on arrangement points. And I will also show you the error message when the function fails to sew some sections together. Now, I'm going to begin a very common type of arrangement, where you may place one piece at one time. So my arrangement up here is really good to me, and I will go ahead and hit auto sew. But the error message pops up that the auto sewing stopped due to an exceptional case. Nothing is sewn together. There are lots of cases for this function not working. We will definitely improve it. But I do know that if I arrange this in a different method, it will work on some parts. So here I'm going to select my pieces as a pair and place it on the center arrangement points. You can adjust it slightly if you want to. And then I will have the back panels and raised bank placed. I just use the offset to pull them out. Now, if I hit the auto sewing function, it does sew some parts together. The waistband actually sews incorrectly, and that could happen too, so you always need to check the sewing yourself. It is not an artificially intelligent tool, knows really accurately what is supposed to connect to what, like we do, but it can generalize based on the proximity and the arrangement point location. As I mentioned earlier that with pleats and dot areas, you can use the auto sewing function without those pieces have been arranged to the arrangement point. I have an example here to show you how I can do that on this outfit that is almost done, but the complex sewing of the pleats has not been finished. So my whole outfit is already arranged and simulated, and these pleat patterns are still flat in the 3D window. One really important aspect for this function to work on pleats is that the pleats are already set up with their internal lines and angles aside. These patterns were made by using our pleat tool, but you can definitely do this with patterns that are imported with pleats already built in. You just have to go through the process of putting the markings there. We have some pleat function tool that will help you set this up. So now I will hit auto sewing, and this window pops up because it does detect some areas that was unable to finish sewing, like the seam here. But you can see that it's actually sewn this pleated area together, here and here. It also has some areas of the bottom that I don't want, so I'm going to select them and delete it. I'm going to quickly strengthen my pieces and just simulate to see the result. So here we see those pieces split up. Now I can use my manual sewing tool to finish the in-between areas, to attach the front and the back panels. And now we have our pleats completed with less sewing process. Then I'm going to go through one last example of a jacket that is relatively complex. There are some extra pattern pieces I have deactivated, but the other patterns are arranged. I will hit the auto sewing feature, and it's going to sew the majority of those pattern pieces together. It just lets the vent areas unsewn and the front closure unfinished. Now I just have to finish the styling and some of the construction details. So we do encourage you to test auto sewing on very complicated patterns, and the feature will of course improve as release continue. Now we are going to review the update of baseline and internal lines. First, I'm going to turn on monochrome surface so I can have a better view of my pattern markings. So the first update is that the log baseline will display as gray dot line. Now I right-click in the 2D background and select Unlock All Baselines. And you can see the baseline then become more solid and defined, letting me know that it has been unlocked. Then I'm going to point out the first internal line update. With Edit Pattern tool, you can now select partial areas of an internal shape and copy and paste that to another part of your pattern. Previously, you have to break corners apart to copy selecting areas. So this feature will reduce the need for that and make it easier to copy any area that you want. And the same apply to baselines. You can select just a portion of a closed baseline shape and copy and paste that out. Also, an add function to baselines. If you right-click on a baseline with Edit Pattern tool, you will find Converts to Internal Line. So you can now change baseline to internal lines directly with the Edit Pattern tool. Now I'm going to show the addition of extend, trim, and add point to internal line. If you right-click on an internal point or line, and there is another internal line in front of it, you now have the option to extend to internal line as well as pattern outline. You have the same functionality for the baselines, but you can only currently extend to internal line or pattern outlines. So there is no option to extend a baseline to another baseline. There is another change in regards to how internal line might add. When it comes to editing parts of your pattern with the pleat tool or the slash tool. So I'm going to add a few pleats to my pattern. And you can see that the internal lines and the baselines have been split apart where the pleats intersect them. And the same for fullness point tool. So here I spread open these pattern pieces. The internal lines and baselines are slightly split exactly at that location. But one thing I want to point out, this functionality is not exist in the fullness line tool. Here I'm going to demonstrate adjusting some fullness throughout this pattern. As you can see, the internal lines and baselines doesn't change with this edit. Next, we are going to go through the rest of the 2D update. First, I'm going to show an update of the dot tool. So here in the back of this skirt, I have a location where I would like to add a dot. I'm going to begin by using the Edit Pattern tool and right-clicking on the 7 point and choosing Add Dot. Then I can enter the total dot width and length, then hit OK to place that dot. Now you will have the option to shift that dot while you are initially creating it. So you can adjust the curve points and then press Enter to complete the action. And then the dots will be blended manually at the areas where it has been placed. Another simply addition that I'm going to show is related to have a symmetric pattern. Now, if you select a segment, in the Property Editor, it will show you the 2D line length, and we added this symmetric line length. So this shows the total length of both sides. Next, I'm going to show you an update of the position movement option that is built into moving a 7 points. Here, I want to show you that this neckline has some curve points on it. If you simply move and keep holding Ctrl or Shift to move along an axis, the curve points are going to move with you. But if you hold the letter D on your keyboard, CLO is going to hold these curve points in place and restrict them from moving. So be aware of that. You can control how the line is changing when you start editing. And another addition is that you will have the option for finish length. When you right-click, the moving distance menu will now show line 1 and line 2. You can see that the neckline curve is highlighted and line 1 is selected. If I want to change the other lines, I'm going to select line 2, and then you will see the shoulder line becomes highlighted. At the bottom, I can also type in the finish length. Here, I'm going to type in 130 mm. And then you can see the changes here. You can hit OK to confirm the adding. Now, I'm going to move to the back neckline and repeat that action to adjust the back shoulder to also 130 mm. And then I just manually correct the back neckline. So the last detail I want to show you is in regards to showing pattern measurements. If you press the Shift plus the letters Z on your keyboard, all the measurements on the patterns will appear. Then, if you go to Print Layout Mode and arrange your pattern pieces here, you will also see the measurements showing. So now you can save those images with your exact line length showing.
Now let's have a look of what has been improved with our POM tool. So here on this side, you can see that I have already drawn one POM straight line. You can also select from one point to another and go across multiple pattern pieces. Then finish with a double click. In 6.0 version, we have added the option to draw curved points to form POM line. Hold the Ctrl key and left click to add points along the line, and then to create a curved POM. The lines will be listed within the POM tab. You can freely rename the measurements, assign a different listing number to it, and type in letters if you are using a specific naming system. The second part of the improvement is located in the Trace tool. Once you use Trace tool to select multiple lines, right-click to select Trace as point of measure. Then a POM is traced out from the selected lines. The same option in the Trace tool also works for internal lines and baseline, so you can access it for all three types of line. Next, I will introduce the improvement to grading compatibility. Here is a pattern that is not graded. We will start with the process of adding a size group. First, to make sure there's a base size, select the patterns and assign a size group to them. Then we can start applying grading. The main update is an addition of curve points reading and holding grading information. Select the Edit Curve Grading tool. You will be able to see all your curve points. Select the entire segment, and at the bottom right corner, you can set the measurement for your arrow key movement. Reselect this segment and use the arrow key on your keyboard to develop the grading. Then you can adjust and control the grade on individual curve points. Now, let me switch to monochrome surface. Then I will move around grading individual areas of this pattern. Usually we will apply a general grade to the entire area. Then we can zoom in to refine the grading of the in-between curve points as well. What you are seeing here is a speed up version. But this process took less than 5 minutes to complete. Here I'm going to talk about a new file type called load all render properties. So it's a .zvrp file. And what this is going to include is the image video property settings, the light property settings, the camera property settings, and the render property settings. It will also include custom fields if they are in the file. So when you choose file save, it will save all of these property settings plus the custom fields. And if you open up a different file and go to File Open, Render Properties, it's going to open all of these same settings and those custom snapshot fields into your new project file. So this is really great for standardizing render properties across lots of different people or images. So I'm going to run you through a brief demo of that. I have my render window open right here, and I have some custom snapshot that I have taken. And if I click on the image video property, I have set these to a custom size. I have a blue background and texture image. Then I click on the lighting settings. I have turned my Doom lights off, have 2 additional lights set up. Click on render properties. I change my render engine to GPU CUDA. So now I'm going to File, Save As, Render Properties. Type in the file name, and here you can see it's a .zvrp file. Then close up this file. So here I'm opening up another file that I have made in another time. I have no custom fields happening. And go to the render window. So this have a different render settings from another point in time, a different lighting, and has different settings for the most part. Now I go to File, Open, Render Properties, and I can choose that render properties file from previous file and get all the other lighting and render property settings that I have applied. Now I'm going to go over a new skin material property that has been added to the material type that you can apply to your avatar texture. So now I have my render window ready, and I've selected all of the texture that are making the look of this avatar. And I've set a render preview The current settings did not apply the skin shader. Here when you select the avatar, her texture type is fabric matte, which is the default. The new skin shader effect is the most noticeable by the ear, so you will like to take a look closer to the ear later. Switching to the skin shader property creates the look of translucency in the way that light might penetrate thinner parts of the body, like the ear or the small parts of the nostril. The settings are already configured to a good natural outcome, and an important number that you don't want to mess with is the mix number. Now this is set as 1. That's the highest that it can go, and if you change this to 0, you won't actually get any of the effect. So lowering this number of mix and look at the ear again, you can find that the translucency is gone. Lowering the mix value is like cancelling out these settings. The density is the next setting that affects all of the groups of shadow, medium, and deep. Color settings that share similar options. We have color, color map, weight, and radius of shadow, and the same for medium and deep. To describe the density scale, it's kind of affects what's considered the size or the scale of the object in comparison to the light that's hitting it, and maybe penetrating it. So increase the density number will actually reduce the amount of translucency, as it is almost like you making the object bigger, thicker, or in turn denser. Imagine when the light hits, it cannot be penetrated far, so it gets lost and almost not even seen. The density scale is 0.7 by default. If I raise this up to 7, then the translucency is literally gone. Now let's lower this down to 0.3. The light is penetrating the skin a lot more, and it looks bright. A color map is something that might come with some avatar that might make in Dash 3D software that with really electronic texture and color map. The weight number will define how dominant this map is among the entire group. Value 1 is the highest this can go. If the number is decreased, you are reducing the presence of the color. But again, these settings really be let alone, as they are a little bit complicated for people who are not familiar with substance or scattering in general. That's why we have set them to a parameter that you don't have to mess with that much. So you can try select your avatar textures, then change the type to skin before rendering. So here is just a side-by-side comparison of avatars without material type applied versus with the skin material type applied. You can concentrate on the ear to look for that change, but overall you can see the improvement of the look of the avatar. Next, I'm going to go over an addition option in the render property, which is related to seam puckling intensity. Here I have a jacket that have a lot of puckling applied to it. Let me refresh the render window so we can see the preview. And I'm going to click on render properties. Here a section has been added called global map. Under it we have seam puckling intensity. The default number is 2. Then I will increase the number from 2 to 5 and refresh my preview window. And then you will see the change in puckling intensity applied to the entire garment. So this is going to affect all of the puckling that is applied to your garment, even if the puckling is made up of a different puckling types. To show the opposite, I will bring this number to 0, which will cause the puckling to be hidden completely. Here is a comparison image showing two renders, comparing the default intensity of 2 to an adjusted number of 5. And you should see the difference in render. And so this is the addition of seam puckling intensity. Then I will show a simple feature that called show grid in the rendering window. I've generated a render preview, and below you can turn on show grid to give yourself some guidelines in the render window. This is just a visual aid. These lines will not appear on any final render images. Next, I will introduce you the addition of metalness and metalness map. So I will explain this first on a really basic level. First, when you select the fabric, in the property editor, you can see that we now support PBR material. And here under the material, you will see PBR is the default. Now when you scroll down the property editor, you will see metalness and the metalness map. The metalness toggle can be used without a map, and the roughness intensity and reflection intensity will all react with it to all increase or decrease to show the shininess within the scenes. This is an addition control that you have in the new version. Next, I will bring all the settings back to default. 50 for roughness, 15 for reflection, and 0 for the metalness. Then I will select this black and white image that I have prepared and drag it into the metalness map area to apply it. I'm going to increase the metalness percentage back up, and you will see how this map is affecting the rendering results. Darker area in the map will be recognized as higher reflection, and then the lighter whiter area will be rendered with less reflection. So you can see that reflective type pattern on this fabric now. In current case, the fabric is still set as fabric matte. If you go further by changing the fabric type to metal, it will affect the entire texture, and this overpowered your map. So when you are using a black and white image as your metalness map that you want to affect different areas in various degree, you may not want to turn your type to metal, but keep this as matte. And what you should do is to increase the metalness level to increase the amount of metalness read by the render from the image that used as the map. The last detail is that you can transform the size of your metalness map, and you can find the options under transformation. If I reduce the size, you can see the change, and it updates the render as well. So this concludes the very basic use of a metalness map. I'm going to begin again by starting with a blank piece of fabric. Then I will quickly demonstrate using the metalness option with a full set of matching maps. And this is the result that we'll get in the end. First, I'm going to click on my fabric and begin by pulling all of the maps in their appropriate area. And I also switch the roughness to map here. And lastly, I will apply the metalness map. I'm gonna shrink this texture down so we can get a little bit more details in the render. Then once I have adjusted the render setting, I'm going to increase the metalness map amount. And here you can see the final output of all of these maps combined with the metalness property increased. Now, as I have all the maps applied, I'm going to test changing my fabric type to metal, and you can see the result. So depending on your texture images and the amount of maps you apply, changing the type to metal can sometimes has a great effect on your outcome. The last page is about metalness. I will show another way that you can use your metalness map by pairing the same image to the roughness map. So here I have a plain fabric. First, I'm changing my fabric type to metal. And then in the metalness area, I will have this image of a star. The part is white is actually going to show as metal, with this black and white image, it will read the white areas as very shiny and metal, and the areas in between as matte, but still has some reflectiveness between those in between areas. If I switch the roughness to map and bring the same black and white star image to roughness map, the black areas will then show shine. Because the roughness map reads darker area as smoother, and therefore allow more reflection intensity to show. If we choose invert, it will invert the black and white image. And so the black areas on the star becomes the part that will show reflection. Now you can see the stars are reflective, but the area in between is matte, and no shine to them at all. So what's also new is the ability to use the opacity map. If you select your fabric and look into the property editor, you will find opacity map. You can use either a black and white JPEG or a PNG which has an alpha channel that the transparency already built in. To use the JPEG, simply drag it into your opacity map area, and the black area will read as transparent and the white area will be visible. And you can leave this on the RGB mode. If you want to use the PNG with the alpha channel, you will just have to change the mode to alpha to make it work. So here, if you are still using RGB mode for a PNG, it won't show properly. You can see the update when the mode changed to alpha. I'm going to show you the addition of iridescent materials type. To demonstrate the effect, I have an outfit here in the scenes, and I've brought up a render preview showing the current state of all the fabric. I'm going to apply the iridescent to the solid blue fabric and also to the print fabric that I have applied to this face fabric. When I click on this fabric, you can see the fabric type is still the matte by default. Then click on the print fabric. The fabric type is also fabric matte. And if you go to material type section, in the drop-down menu you will find iridescent render only. So this will only show in the preview render window. It will not show in the 3D window. And left click on that render setting and the render window is automatically updating to preview the iridescent type applied. Now you can see the prints has iridescent. Then I will select the blue fabric and apply the iridescent effect as well. So the setting that goes along with the iridescent property are a set of colors that you can change to show different highlight types. So here I changed to yellow, and you can see this area has some yellow built into it. I will close the color window and scroll down to the roughness property. Increase the roughness intensity will reduce the amount of shine coming off from the fabric. The hue shift will change what colors are dominant and showing the most prominently in the iridescent reflection. Lastly, we have weight. The more you increase the weight, the more intensity the color is going to show. And here is a render of the finalized iridescent fabric. Finally, I'm going to go through the schematic render. Schematic render is an update to a feature called Show Style Lines that was originally built into 3D garment display menu. And it has been pulled out, moved here with its own icon, and renamed as Schematic Render. So if you left click on this icon, the window is going to transform in its type of sketch like black and white field, and you can move around your garment and see that it resembles a sketch. So a window will appear, and there are several settings that you have to change under the line thickness. First, it will be the silhouette line that you can make the outlines thicker or thinner. Second, we have seam line thickness, and you can adjust that as well. Third is the internal line that you see on the garment. You can adjust its thickness also. If you have some internal lines that you may not need, you can hide them by clicking the eye icon next to it. Here we have the top stitch line thickness as well. Step further, we have two color options. The first is line color, and the second is common color. The last adjustable detail is the brightness of the shadow. You can see the color changes a little as toggle the brightness up and down. I'm switching the color back to black and white to continue the remaining of the demo. Last, I will show you what it's gonna look like when using the snapshot to a schematic render. First, I'm going to show you some custom fields that I have created. So I took some snapshot of the field points that I like. Now I'm going to click File, Snapshot, 3D window, and choose a location to save. If you click on the multi-field in the preview, I can pull some of the custom field to it and then save it. Once that is done, you will be able to create images with the schematic render in Snapshot. To turn off and get out of this schematic render field, simply hit the X icon to exit, and this is the schematic render. Thank you so much for joining us today in the 6.0 webinar. We will have a few more features to showcase, so please subscribe to see more updates.